I think that you have to be willing to back yourself. You really need to be able to advocate for yourself and to know where your boundaries are, and be prepared to walk away.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. We've talked with many guests about change in the hospitality sector, how kitchens and workplace environments are different to how they used to be, but how different are they? What avenues are there to carve a career, and what support is out there to help provide those pathways? Bridget Raffal is the owner of Where's Nick Wine Bar, president of Women and Revolution, and the vice president of Sommeliers Australia. Bridget, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm good. It's good to get you on the show. You are busy and involved in a lot of things. How are things at the moment?
They're good, yeah. It's been a while. I feel like we've been talking about this one for a couple of years maybe.
Well, it's good to get you on the show. You're the owner of Where's Nick. Well, I want to start there. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Where's Nick is a small wine bar in Marrickville. I've been there and had it for about 5 years, but it's been running since 2017. And the guys who opened it now have a bottle shop next door. It's
got some amazing accolades in its short period of time. What do you think's so special about it?
I think it's very different to everything else in Sydney, to be honest. It's always been a bit of an organic beast. It was never particularly curated in terms of vibe. We want it to reflect the neighbourhood and the community that it's in, and we really want it to be like deliberately casual and unpretentious. And I think in wine, people can often lean in towards the fancier elements of it, and that can make people feel a bit uncomfortable or intimidated. And we really go the other way. We just want to have an easy, honest, fun conversation about it without necessarily like dumbing it down. But we just sort of keep things accessible.
Marrickville is a really exciting suburb in Sydney. And its sort of evolution has sort of boomed a little bit more in recent years, but it's always had a rich sort of history with food. Tell us a bit about the suburb and what you love about it.
Marrickville's great. It's a real melting pot. It's a real community. You've got these fantastic Vietnamese restaurants, these old school Greek elements to it, the delis and Corinthians up the road. You've got a lot of artists based in the area. There's a lot of workshops. It's a real melting pot. Very, very diverse, very queer friendly. Just a fantastic neighbourhood to be based in.
I know we've tried to line you up on the show previously, and I'm so glad we got you here. But a couple of years ago, you were heavily involved with the beginnings and co-founder of Women and Revolution. Tell us a bit about that.
So Women in Revolution is a charity that we founded back in 2021 to represent and connect women in the hospitality and wine industries and push for gender equity in those industries. So sort of came out of that period in COVID where, we were all legitimately disconnected from each other. And when we had the opportunity to get together, we sort of started having conversations around how things were going to look when we all went back to work. And we realized that we were sort of basically living similar struggles in all of our individual spheres. So it was a way of coming together to overcome those issues.
Tell us a bit about what you guys have been doing over the last couple of years and how what the influence and impact has been.
So we started off very, very simply and very small, around a dinner table, just having that initial conversation, and it just had this real energy and momentum from the get-go. So when we said, okay, let's do it again, the first dinner was 10 or 12 people. The next one was 24 already, and then we had this wait list of people that just wanted to attend and connect. And so we held a meeting at Where's Nick, and we were allowed to have, I think, 50 people there. And we decided to formalise it. We wanted it to be sustainable and ongoing, and so we formalised it as a not-for-profit, and it's now got 200 members. And over the last few years, we've been busy. We've been really busy. We took out the Good Food inaugural Cultural Change Champion Award late last year for the work that we had been doing, namely the Outspoken program that we run, which teaches women and non-binary members how to advocate for themselves, and our collaboration with the Human Rights Commission to facilitate community feedback for the Speaking from Experience program, which was a program that was intended to capture feedback from industries around Australia on the issue of sexual harassment and how people think that it should be tackled.
It's a very complex issue. How do you guys approach and be involved to not only raise awareness, but provide support? Like, what sort of role do you guys play at the moment in that sort of thing?
It's fairly multifaceted. So the community element is a huge part of it. We have a WhatsApp forum. Excuse me. We have a WhatsApp forum where all of our members are connected and they've got the opportunity to reach out directly to other members. So I think you really can't overstate the importance of that. A big part of the problem is that, particularly in hospitality and wine industries, you've got a young workforce, people who often lack mentors, and when things are happening in their workplace, they may not be aware of their rights. They may not be aware that what is happening is illegal, and they don't have anybody to ask, just as a sounding board. You know, most people aren't going to go to the police straight away or reach out to Fair Work Australia. They all feel like very formal and intimidating steps. So that community element of having our members just have the option to reach out to someone and say, "Hey, this happened. Is that okay? Is that weird? I feel weird about it." And to have somebody who might have more experience say, "Yeah, that's not okay. That thing that happened to you is absolutely not okay. And here are the things that you can do about it." So that is really the foundation of the organisation is that community and the support that it offers. But then we also, we run programs that educate and coach our members so that they are better placed to advocate for themselves.
You mentioned that COVID was a time that sort of gave you the space to be able to analyse what sort of workforce you wanted to create and go back into when that time came. We will talk about change a lot in hospitality. There's always reference to 20 years ago and what kitchens and environments were like compared to now, but change isn't a finite sort of final thing. What was the industry like then, and what sort of change are you seeing or compared to sort of your earlier days?
I think that it is changing. I think that people are better placed to talk about the things that need to change, and I think that there is more of just more interest in that conversation generally. You really see it in the mainstream media now. There was fantastic reporting just yesterday, 60 Minutes, and Bianca Horvat's pieces in Good Food. This is really the first time that I've seen dedicated reporting around these issues, sexual harassment in particular, and exploitation of migrant workers. I think for a really long time, everybody just had their heads in the sand, or they just acted like hospitality was Texas and, there are no rules and that's just how it is and nothing's ever going to change. I think that people are really taking it a lot more seriously and saying, okay, that's not acceptable. This is an industry that employs like 1 million people. Like it's huge, and there's a lot of money in it. There are a lot of big players in it. It's ridiculous that we are not holding employers to any kind of standard, and that people just get a free pass.
What sort of impact has your involvement had on you personally and seeing change and trying to affect change? Has it changed you the last couple of years with Women in Revolution?
Oh, definitely. I think, in many ways positively. Initially, I thought that I might have been the only one, which is, it's silly to say, but I think that, that is a reasonably universal experience, that people think that, oh, yeah, I'm the only one. I'm the one that's just, the squeaky wheel, or that is experiencing these sorts of issues. And to realize that, no, I'm not, and that this is a broader industry problem is in some ways reassuring to to know that there are people out there who experience the same thing that I can reach out to for support. But also, it's pretty demoralizing to see how endemic it is to the industry. But I think, in terms of overall change since 2020, I mean, when I moved from fine dining to Where's Nick to run the bar, it was really important to me that I was running that business in accordance with my values. I wanted to carve out a space in hospitality that felt more equal, that was run on reasonable terms, that the guests didn't get to dictate how those relationships worked, and to run an adult space that works on boundaries and consent.
Well, I want to explore this a little bit more in detail a bit later on, and also your amazing work with Sommeliers Australia as well. But take us back to when you were young. Whereabouts did you grow up, and was food a big part of your life with your family?
Yeah, huge. I was born in Melbourne, but we moved up to Sydney when I was young, still in primary school. So I grew up on the North Shore in Sydney, and did all of my schooling there. And food was everything. Both of my parents are fantastic cooks, and we always ate together at the dinner table. There was never a TV in the dining room. We had I think pretty weirdly strict rules now that I look back on it. Everybody thinks their childhood is normal, but when I look back on it, we had some pretty formal dining rules that everybody had to wait until everybody was finished, and we said, "I've had sufficient. May I please be excused?" But I understand now that's a bit weird. But we also had rules like, we weren't allowed to say if we didn't like something. We didn't have to eat it. We never had to finish everything on our plate. But if my parents said, we're not interested in cooking for you and sort of hearing your feedback on whether or not you like the food. So you can try it. If you don't like it, leave it on your plate. Just don't, go on about it. Which I think was a pretty good rule, really. It just, it taught us just to, I guess, engage with food as adults. And we didn't really have that opportunity to rebel in the form of I don't want to eat that. Yeah.
Tell us about your move into hospitality. When did you first sort of think about it as a career, and how did you get your foot in the door?
Well, I've always worked in hospitality. I started off as a barista and worked with coffee all the way, through while I was at university. And then I went overseas to backpack Europe and had a British passport, which at the time was worth something. So I was able to stay and settle, and I settled in the Netherlands and continued working in hospitality there, and sort of bounced around different areas of the industry, from bartending and cocktails to chefing, sort of have done all of the sections really, and then fell in love with wine. So moved into restaurant management, and then moved into wine, and got educated in wine, and became a sommelier after that.
Tell us about when you were back in Australia. I know you've worked with some pretty amazing venues. What were the really important sort of venues and people for you as you started to build your career?
For wine, I think it would be Sixpenny. So I started there back in 2017, and at the time there were two hats, and it was, it already had an excellent reputation in the industry. Very small, they sort of paved their own way, and they just did what they wanted to do, and they did it really well. And I think, a bit unique in that it's in the inner west as well. And we secured the third hat the following year, and that obviously raised the profile of the venue and myself along with it. And that was where I sort of, I guess, started carving out a bit of a space for myself in the wine world in Sydney, and having to think about what I wanted to do with it. And at that stage, I had a project for the list to just get it to 50-50 female and male producers. And that received a bit of attention, probably more than I'd really expected. I didn't think anybody was going to be particularly interested in it. I was just doing it because I wanted to just have a space that felt equal. And I guess, that led later on into Women in Revolution, because I suppose it put me on the radar of other women in the industry as somebody who was willing to talk about these things.
You spent some time at the legendary Book Kitchen in Sydney, in Surrey Hills there. What did you take from your time there?
Oh, gosh, that was a long time ago. I think probably the importance of community support. They had a really strong local following. I suppose that stayed with me, and what it means to run a team, and what it means to be responsible for a team.
You mentioned a little earlier that after sort of building your career in hospitality, you fell in love with wine and then went in that direction. Tell us about that period. How did you fall in love with wine, and what is it that fascinates you so much?
Well, I suppose I'd always enjoyed it. It was always, I grew up seeing wine enjoyed at the table. So even, when I was living in Amsterdam in my late teens, early 20s, we would have dinners at home, and we would go to the supermarket there and get a €3 bottle of Montepulciano. So, I remember being pretty decent. Probably wasn't very good, but, €3 bottle of wine, I don't know how much that would be now. And so I think, I'd always had an appreciation of the role of wine with food, and it grew from there. But then when I was living in France later, I split my time between the Jura and the mountains above Provence, and just had a lot more exposure to good wine, moved from $3 Montepulciano to Vin Jaune and some other tastier things. Yeah. And then when I moved back to Sydney and moved into a restaurant manager role in a venue that had a good budget and had a good cellar, but didn't have anybody, taking charge of it, I thought, well, I might learn a little bit about this, and did my WSET and just was hooked at that point. It was, this world of wine that is never ending, and you can't know it all. You could just keep at it. It felt really inspiring.
I want to jump back to France for just a moment. Is there a story or a moment that really stands out from your time there where it really affected your thoughts about wine and a career with it?
I don't know if there was a single moment. I think particularly living in Provence, it is as obnoxiously beautiful as it seems. You're there, and it's just like lavender fields everywhere, and then sunflowers everywhere, and beautiful goat's cheese and honey, and wine from all of the from the surrounding regions. I think it's just that it clicked into place. Like it's such a beautiful way of living and enjoying life.
I'm really interested in the approach that you took at Sixpenny, which was, or still is, amazing venue. But what was your relationship like with the chefs and the food, and sort of matching wine to the dishes? How did that work in that setting?
So because it was a degustation, the menu evolved quite slowly. Like they weren't, changing dishes every week. And the pairing, particularly after we got the third hat, the majority of people who would come in would want to do the wine pairing. So it was always important to, have a couple of things that were represented. You always wanted to make sure that there were some fantastic Australian producers, and, a variety of styles and things like that. Pour something for people that they wouldn't necessarily have heard or tried before. And then in terms of like developing it, Daniel Puskas was the head chef at the time. I think he's now more in an exec chef role because they've got Corner 75. But he would just put up the dish, and I would get a couple of samples in or open a couple of things from the cellar, and just have a little play and have a taste and see how it comes together. And where it falls in the menu is obviously really important because if it's an early dish, if it's something that drinks or that eats really well with a full-bodied red, but you need to move into something a lot lighter afterwards, then that obviously doesn't work. You need to have a sense of progression in a pairing. It needs to work holistically as well as individually. And you need to sort of strike a balance between pouring things that people might be excited to try that they haven't tried before, but also not being too challenging with it. I think that sometimes sommeliers can get a little bit wrapped up with themselves and what they think is a really good story or a great wine, and doesn't necessarily make for a great experience as a diner.
How did the gig with Where's Nick begin for you?
So Where's Nick was my local. I lived around the corner in Marrickville and would often hang out there. So I knew the brothers already. And then in the lockdown, obviously, Sixpenny was closed, all the restaurants were closed, and everybody was trying to get by with a little bit of a retail offering. And so I was organising, beverage packs and wine to take away for Sixpenny, and was helping the brothers out a little bit as well. And then they just asked me to come on board and do it initially, to do the wine, because they were sort of a bit burned out and they wanted to move into retail again. And I said, well, if I come on board, it won't be just to do the wine. It will be to do everything, because I don't want to have an excellent wine program if the food is not where it needs to be. And at the time, they were just sort of doing little cheese boards and pizzas. They'd never really set it up to do food. And so I said, if I do it, then we do it my way, and you just have to say yes to everything. And to their credit, they have. They never said no. I said, this is what we need to change. This is what we're going to do. And they said, okay, sure.
Well, at the same time, over the last couple of years, you've also been heavily involved as vice president with Sommeliers Australia. Tell us about that role, and what are you guys doing at the moment?
So it's really exciting at the moment, actually, because a good portion of my time as VP was spent in those COVID years and the post-COVID years. And it obviously, took the wine industry quite a long time in Australia to bounce back. And now I really feel that we're just, into the swing of things. We'll have the education scholarship this year. So that's a program that sort of functions as a bit of a baby Len Evans tutorial. It's 3 days of benchmarking. So, if you have a Chardonnay bracket, then you would expect to see the best Chardonnays from around the world in that bracket. And we get 12 participants, and those participants will get to assess the wines. They'll have the opportunity to speak about the wines and give their opinion, and then they'll be scored based on how they perform. So they get feedback on how they approach wine and how they discuss it and how they blind taste it. And they also get to hear experts in the room do the same thing. So it's a pretty great opportunity. It's really, really exciting. It's been running for a long time. And this will be the second one that I'll have organised, and the first that Chris Crawford has surrendered. Last year the last scholarship, which was a couple of years ago, was his last, and it was his baby. So, yeah, it's a really great tradition to be continuing with.
The role of the sommelier is a fascinating one because there's all of this knowledge that is required, and yet it needs to be delivered in a way that is pleasing to the consumer. Or how do you balance that? Like, what's the best experience for a guest in your venue, for instance, to explore wines that they haven't necessarily had before?
Well, I think at Where's Nick, we pour everything on style, and we're really looking to showcase smaller producers and lesser known regions and varieties. And I find that in wine, when you take away the safety net, people are forced to trust you and forced to try something new. So, for example, we'll rarely pour a Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, for example. It's a wine style that most people are familiar with. So there'll always be something that is like fresh and aromatic and driven by acidity that ticks quite a few boxes for people who might like to drink Marlborough Sauvignon Blancs, but it'll be something different, and it's a conversation point.
You're involved in a lot of festivals and doing a lot of talks and all sorts of things, and soon you'll be in Canberra at Subject Matters. What are you doing there?
So I'll be speaking on the panel for the symposium that Caitlin's put together with the Venus Vinifera team. And I think this year it's focused on a couple of topics, but one of those is like carving out a career for yourself in wine. Yeah, so it'll be good. It'll be good to see the gang. It's always good to get down to Canberra. It's pretty exciting. I love the dining scene there.
I'm glad you sort of mentioned that, because I wanted to ask you about what sort of advice, or what would you say to someone that's quite young, a woman quite young coming into the industry to make a real career of it at the moment, especially with trying to create change? What advice would you have?
I think that you have to be willing to back yourself. You really need to be able to advocate for yourself and to know where your boundaries are, and be prepared to walk away.
That's pretty powerful. You've done amazing things over the last couple of years. What are the next sort of couple of years looking like for you?
Well, things are about to get very busy. Where's Nick's going 7 days? So tonight will be the first Monday open. So I'm expecting to see a lot more hospitality. It's always sort of felt like the kind of venue that should be open Mondays, but we've always been fairly protective of our own hospo weekends. So we're surrendering that for the greater good. And then towards the end of the year, I'll be opening a new venue, a restaurant with my partner in Darlinghurst at the Oxford Street end. So, yeah, that'll be another challenge. Yeah.
It sounds very exciting. Look forward to that. Bridget, loved having you on the show today and look forward to catching up again. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Thanks very much. It was good to chat.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.